Attila the Hun was not merely an invader, he was a blade piercing the heart of a dying Rome. In 451 AD, his Hunnic warriors surged across the borders of a rotting Roman Empire, a realm torn apart by corruption and civil strife. In this chaos, General Flavius Aetius scrawled a desperate letter to Attila, labeling him a necessary evil against the rival factions that were dismantling the empire from within. This was no compliment. It was a brutal admission that Rome had capitulated before a violent force. As corrupt officials hoarded wealth and squandered resources, the Roman legions had degenerated into mere shadows, ineffective and feeble. Rebellions from tribes like the Visigoths only added to the internal decay, tearing Rome apart. As Attila led his Huns into battle, he wielded more than just weapons. He turned fear into a lethal tool that shattered enemy resolve with every ruthless advance. He became a living embodiment of the strength that Rome had long denied. To confront this existential threat, Aetius was forced to forge a tenuous alliance with rival tribes, a desperate act to unite divided forces against a common enemy. The fight against Attila was not just military engagement, it represented a clash between two realities, one steeped in decay, and another driven by an unyielding force eager for dominance. With each village scorched and each city laid to waste by Hunnic brutality, it became painfully clear Attila sought more than mere power. He exposed that Rome had become so weak it could not defend itself against the storm of savagery he unleashed. He carved out a new chapter for Europe, where brutality reigned unchecked while the once mighty empire lay bleeding and vulnerable. Attila was more than a warrior. He was a ruthless manipulator. After his uncle Rugila died in 434 AD, Attila and his brother Bleda seized absolute power over the Huns. There was no room for mercy or compassion. He gathered loyalists and eliminated anyone who dared stand against him. Within weeks, Attila established total control through fear and bloodshed. In 435 AD, he struck a secret deal with the Eastern Roman Empire, known as the Treaty of Margus. This was not a diplomatic agreement. It was outright extortion. Rome had to pay him annual tribute for a temporary halt to the slaughter. Historical records reveal that if they failed to meet his demands, he would unleash destruction without hesitation. While Roman officials wallowed in greed and incompetence, Attila thrived amidst chaos. To solidify his grip on power, he killed Bleda in 445, a cold act that showcased his brutality. Accounts from that period state Bleda fell victim to his own brother's hand, sending a clear message: power lies in eliminating threats, even if they are family. As Attila pushed into new territories, his goal was not just victory, but total subjugation of conquered tribes. He commanded his forces to wipe out anyone who resisted. Defiant leaders faced brutal executions for their arrogance. He turned tribes into tools for his ambitions. Attila knew nothing of loyalty or friendship. He only understood power and violence. He became the supreme tyrant of the Hunnic world, where every action was dictated by cunning strategy and unrelenting brutality. In 451 AD, Attila charged into Gaul with his Hunnic forces in a brutal campaign that left the land soaked in blood. The Battle of the Catalonian Plains marked one of the bloodiest encounters in history. Chroniclers noted that rivers of blood flowed, with corpses littering the ground, their identities lost amidst the carnage. General Flavius Aetius faced a grim reality. He scrambled to gather troops from various tribes, including the Visigoths, a task made impossible by doubt gnawing at their courage. As the Huns advanced, screams pierced the air, weapons clashed with a sickening finality. Roman soldiers fell one after another, their blood painting the earth beneath them. The battle stretched on for hours. Attila employed ruthless strategies. He ordered a retreat to draw the enemy in. As Aetius and his Roman forces surged forward in misplaced confidence, Attila countered with fierce brutality that shattered their resolve. This was not just combat, it turned into a massacre. The bodies piled up fast. The air thickened with the scent of death and decay, choking all who fought on that cursed field. There was no room for pride or honor, only chaos and terror gripped every soldier's heart. Aetius could only watch as his fragile coalition crumbled under Attila's relentless assault. When Attila commanded his troops to withdraw, he left behind gruesome scenes, lifeless bodies sprawled across the plains, survivors trudging home in shock, haunted by visions of slaughter, the steep price Rome paid for its own weakness. In 452 AD, Attila invaded Italy, not merely to plunder, but to maintain his facade of invincibility. During a clandestine meeting with Pope Leo I, it is rumored that he was persuaded to withdraw. Vatican records indicate that Leo wielded religious authority as a weapon against Attila, threatening him with divine retribution for his transgressions. The ambiguity of historical documents leaves room for speculation. Some suggest that Attila accepted a substantial bribe from Rome to turn back, while others claim that disease swept through his camp, forcing his retreat. This incident became an enigma, wrapped in superstition and fear. Attila's image as an unbeatable force remained intact, while the reality of his vulnerabilities was obscured. This was not a withdrawal motivated by mercy, but a calculated performance designed to protect his standing among allies and foes alike. Attila dispatched letters to European leaders, promising protection to those who capitulated, while issuing death threats to any who would dare resist him. These missives were not simple communications. They carried the weight of dread, and the certainty of violence should defiance arise. The Pope's influence was only one facet of the retreat. It was part of a broader strategy for maintaining dominance while manipulating perceptions. Attila's tactical mind recognized that retreat could be wielded as power too, by leaving Italy unscathed for the moment and preserving his fearsome reputation. He ensured that his enemies remained in a state of anxiety and uncertainty. Even in withdrawal, he crafted a narrative that reinforced his stature as a living legend, a ruthless conqueror whose mere name sparked terror across the lands. The aftermath left survivors grappling with haunting images, the faces of men who had once rallied behind him now twisted in confusion. The true motivations behind Attila's retreat remained shrouded in ambiguity. However, one thing was clear. He understood that the myth he cultivated was as vital as any sword or spear in his arsenal. In 453 AD, the death of Attila unleashed chaos across a realm steeped in his bloodshed. On the night of his wedding to Ildiko, he collapsed. Blood streamed from his nose, a disgraceful end for a man who had instilled terror throughout Europe. Historical records from Prisca state flatly, when Attila fell, no one knew if fate or conspiracy had taken him down. This demise was not merely an end, but the catalyst for deeper turmoil. In the days following his death, his generals descended into a savage struggle for power. The successors were feeble, incapable of holding together the empire built on brutality and bloodshed. Tribes that had once trembled at his name rose against their new leaders, driven by vengeance and a hunger for reclaiming their strength. Betrayal spread through the ranks with ruthless efficiency. Commanders once loyal plotted in shadows, trusted allies transformed into executioners in waiting. Meetings convened in darkness, loyalty evaporated as respect twisted into treachery. Reports circulated that those elevated by Attila had poisoned him, an act of betrayal simmering beneath the surface even as he drew his last breath. The ensuing chaos spiraled out of control, the vision of a unified empire shattered into bitter remnants. Violence erupted internally with horrifying intensity. Other tribes rallied against the Huns, emboldened to confront the forces that had long oppressed them. Order disintegrated. Chaos reigned supreme as Attila's cold body lay forgotten amid the ruins he had wrought. Attila's death created a vacuum of power filled with unrelenting brutality and despair, a place where blood flowed freely and no one could accurately predict their own fate.